Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 episode number 117 based on novel. So let's start. Shu Tianran said, "I'm even more fascinated and interested in this battle after listening to your analysis. Let's just wait and see." The judge had entered the arena by now. He announced the rules of the round-robin stage before he added a final announcement. Group 1, the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy versus the Tang Sect. Participants, please enter the waiting area. Will the first contestants of the single elimination phase please step on stage? Both teams stood up at almost the same time, with the exception of Hua Yuhao. Their gazes met, and sparks seemed to fly in that instant. Hua Yuhao's eyes were still closed, as if he were actually sleeping. Wang Chua's eyes were ice-cold, but her eyes were locked on Hua Yuhao from the beginning to the end. She frowned involuntarily when she noticed that he hadn't opened his eyes at all. The Tang Sect had forfeited the last round, and she was incredibly displeased with their decision. Will they give this round up as well? No matter what happens, I will lead Shrek Academy into the next round. We have to defeat the Sun Moon Empire's team, and we will also have to defeat the Tang Sect. What should I do if they abandon this round once more? Thoughts were still spinning around in Wang Chua's head while the contestants entered the waiting area. Nan Chocho whispered to Jing Xian beside her over at the Tang Sect's camp. "Do you think we can win this round? That's the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy. They came in second place in the previous round, and I've heard that they've been second place for 2 seasons in a row. They have never lost to anyone else besides the Shrek Academy team." Jing Xian answered mysteriously, "Does that mean you favor our opponents in this round?" Nan Chocho said, "Of course. We forfeited the last round, but why aren't we forfeiting this one? It's better for us if we conserve our strength and our energy to fight the other teams. This is the first round, and if we end up losing this round and we all end up wounded and exhausted, doesn't that mean we're going home?" Jing Xian felt a little speechless. "Does that mean you believe we have the ability to defeat the Shrek Academy team? If we forfeit this round and we lose against Shrek Academy, how do we progress to the next round? Only 2 teams from each group can progress into the quarterfinals." Nan Chocho widened her eyes. "What? You think the Tang Sect, a sect without any reputation at all, can progress into the quarterfinals? Are you sure about what you just said? Unless every single one of them is as powerful as you are, how can they progress into the quarterfinals? It's just not possible. Their most optimal choice should be to try their best to win a few rounds in the group stage, so that they can have a good ranking at the end." Jing Xian chuckled and said, "I wouldn't be so sure about that. How about, let's have a bet?" Nan Chocho had always been rather stubborn and defiant. "What are we betting on? How's that going to work?" Jing Xian replied, "We can bet on who emerges victorious in this round. You favor the Sun Moon Empire's team, right? I am betting that the Tang Sect will win this round. If you win, I will take you Radiant City's most lavish and luxurious hotel for a delicious meal. But if you lose, you have to fight against me 1 versus 1 over 10 different occasions, and split over 10 different days. Your annihilation element is quite interesting." The corner of Nan Chocho's mouth twitched, and it was evident that she was reminiscing about a certain unpleasant memory. She deliberated for a little while, and she nodded vigorously as she said, "All right, it's a done deal, then. You can't cheat, though. I feel like I can already see a sumptuous meal in front of me." Jing Xian said arrogantly, "I will make this bet with you, in the name of the Tang Sect's glory. If I lose, so be it, and all I have to do is spend some money to take you out for a meal. It's a deal, neither of us can cheat." Ji Juechen was sitting on Jing Xian's other side, and his mouth twitched, but his eyes were as calm as always. His gaze was fixated on Hua Yuhao. "This epic battle will surely inspire me in some way. It's your show, Yuhao. But how much of your true abilities can you unleash with the state that your body is in?" Both teams were inside the waiting area at this point. Xiao Hongchen gestured to one of the Sun Moon Empire's team members, and the youth immediately leapt to his feet and jumped onto the competition stage. He was big and tall, and his shoulders were extremely broad. His eyes were cool and collected, and he seemed very calm to the people watching him. He could be considered very dignified and rather dashing, with especially wide hands, with long and slender fingers. The audience could tell that he was quite formidable as soon as he got onto the competition stage. Wang Dong patted Hua Yuhao's right hand gently over in the Tang Sect's camp, and she stood up from her seat. Hua Yuhao finally opened his eyes as she stood up. His eyes were cold, and could even be described as grim and unfeeling. Hua Yuhao gave a faint nod back to Wang Dong, but he didn't say anything else. Wang Dong tapped on the ground with her foot and drifted onto the competition stage. The protective soul barriers rose from the ground the moment she stepped onto the stage and separated the contestants from the outside world. "It's Wang Dong." Meng Hongchen was seated inside the waiting area, and she felt as if a bucket of ice-cold water had just splashed over her fighting spirit and extinguished half of it. A strange smile broke out across Xiao Hongchen's face. Looks like the heavens are on our side, and it was the right decision not to let you take point. If you accidentally lost to him, we would have had real problems in the subsequent rounds. Meng Hongchen bit down on her lower lip and mumbled under her breath, if only I had known Wang Dong was the first one, then I would have told Shashing to have some mercy and not land any killing blows. It's too late now. What should I do? Xiao Hongchen was clearly exasperated, but he didn't seem surprised by her reaction at all. Whose side are you on? The question we should be thinking about is whether we can win this round. They were quarreling on their side, while Wang Dong and the youth from the Sun Moon Empire's team walked to the center of the stage. The judge glanced at them both as he lowered his voice and said, "This is the first fight of the round-robin stage. Be careful, you two, and try your best not to wound or cripple your opponent. I will immediately separate the two of you once I deem one party to be victorious, and neither party is to continue attacking. Otherwise, I will declare the violator disqualified. Do you understand?" There were too many people who were either wounded or dead from the elimination rounds, and the organizing committee had shouldered quite some pressure. It was natural that they would require the judges to be a lot stricter than before. The youth from the Sun Moon Empire's team nodded and said, "My name is Shashing, remember my name, perhaps it will follow you for the rest of your life." He turned around towards the edge next to his camp as he spoke. Wang Dong frowned and asked the judge, "Are youths nowadays all so ridiculous?" The corner of the judge's mouth twitched. Prepare for battle. This competition relies on fighting strength and abilities, not how powerful your mouth is. Wang Dong said plainly, "Don't be biased. Otherwise, you will regret it." The judge was momentarily stunned. He had been the judge for quite a few rounds during the elimination round, and this was the first time that he was encountering somebody that dared to threaten a judge. This fellow was a little outrageous. Wang Dong was just about to turn around and return to her own side, but she suddenly saw someone waving to her from the other side. Wasn't that Meng Hongchen? Wang Dong glanced at her helplessly, and she waved back at the same time before she retreated to her own side. Meng Hongchen instantly became excited as she turned towards Xiao Hongchen and said, "Did you see that, brother? He waved to me. Did you see how exasperated and helpless he looked? It's clear that he doesn't want to face us in battle. We have to get him into our academy after the competition, no matter what. I can be with him that way." "Shut up. You're so hopelessly infatuated. I've had enough of you. Sit your ass down, you have utterly disgraced the Hongchen family." Xiao Hongchen was practically growling as softly as he could. Wang Dong's eyes met Hua Yuhao's eyes when she turned back around and walked towards her own camp. Hua Yuhao's eyes were ice-cold at this moment, as if he was in an entirely different state altogether, and he made a gesture at her. Wang Dong nodded softly to show that she understood. She walked all the way to the competition stage's edge before she turned back around once more. However, she could see just as she was turning around that the judge's arm had already swung downwards to signal that the fight had begun. "Do you have to be so obviously biased?" Wang Dong frowned faintly. She wasn't hasty to charge forward, and her eyes sparkled as a pair of dazzling wings extended from behind her back. Enormous blue wings covered her entire back, and she was immediately blanketed with a beautiful bluish-golden layer of light. Her radiant butterfly goddess wings flickered with golden spots, and it felt as if these spots had come alive as a dense aura of light surged into the sky. The first person to make a move was Shashing, who was representing the Sun Moon Empire's team. He took a step out and dashed forward as his flying-type soul tool extended out behind his body at the same time. It took 2 accelerations before he surged into the sky and flew high into the air. 4 streaks of brilliant white light erupted from behind his flying-type soul tool and propelled his body into the sky like a shooting star. A Class 4 scarlet-red explosive shell barreled toward Wang Dong as he soared through the sky. This season was just like the last one, and soul engineers were not allowed to use stationary soul tools. Class 4 explosive shells had a similar reputation to milk bottles amongst Class 4 soul tools, and they were extremely powerful. However, a longer time was needed to charge them up. That Shashing could control his flying-type soul tool to rise through the air while firing an explosive shell so quickly meant he was quite adept with soul tools. Wang Dong shifted her mouth indifferently as she flapped her wings gently and rose into the sky along with him. The reason why Hua Yuhao agreed to let her take the first round was substantially related to the fact that she could fly. Sects and academies that consisted mostly of soul engineers had a higher win rate in the elimination rounds before this because of the tournament's new rules. The immense advantage that soul engineers had because they could fly was just too evident. Wang Dong shot into the sky like an arrow, but a strange scene occurred immediately afterwards. The Class 4 explosive shell suddenly changed direction and followed closely behind her. An explosive shell with tracking abilities? Then it's not a Class 4 shell anymore. But why does its power look like a Class 4 shell? Hua Yuhao's brain was calculating rapidly in the Tang sect's waiting area. This round was especially important for the Tang sect, and Wang Dong was the first one to fight. Hua Yuhao was afraid that he would lose his cool and his rationality because he was too concerned, and that he wouldn't keep his calm to continue commanding his team in the tournament. Therefore, when his eyes were closed before this, he was using one of the skills of necromancy that he had learned from the Calamity Necromancer, Electrolux, which was called the Necromancer's Silent Heart. This skill allowed him to enter a peculiarly calm state, and the skill also greatly boosted his senses. The only downside was that he would be incapable of any emotions at all over the next day, and he would only use the most rational and reasonable methods to think about things. Wang Dong's second soul ring sparkled, and a golden light burst forth from the light spots on her wings behind her. The sphere of light immediately collided with the explosive shell hurtling through the air. Intense explosions could be heard, and sphere of scorching red light over 10 meters in diameter instantly lit up the sky. The violent shockwaves that resulted from the collision caused the air in the sky to twist and contort. This was a Class 5 explosive shell after all, and the shell possessed power close to a Class 6 Soul Tools attack. Shashing was sophisticated, indeed. Shashing revealed 5 soul rings, 2 yellow and 3 purple rings, which contrasted with Wang Dong's 2 yellow, 2 purple, and 2 black soul rings. Wang Dong's ring combination was the most optimal combination, and she was also a soul emperor. There was quite a gap between their cultivations. However, since Shashing could unleash a Class 5 explosive shell with tracking abilities within such a short period of time, it was likely that he wasn't far from his 6th ring even though he only had 5 rings at the moment. The vigorous shockwaves touched Wang Dong in the end, and forced her body upwards. On the other side, 3 more explosive shells whistled through the air and formed a triangular formation in the sky. This formation completely locked Wang Dong in and sealed everything off as she rose up through the air. Wang Dong wasn't hasty to soar upwards, but neither did she intend to meet these shells head-on. She withdrew her wings, and plummeted down through the air just like that. However, the explosive shells could lock onto her and track her down, and they immediately pursued her as she fell. Wang Dong didn't seem like she was about to reduce her speed, and she plunged down right towards the ground. The location that she was going towards was actually where the judge was, and she began to shout as she continued diving through the air, "Watch out, please move away." The judge received a rude shock. They were only in the round-robin stage, so they couldn't send that powerful a soul master out to be the judge. He was a 7-ringed soul sage, but he still couldn't take the force of 3 explosive shells detonating at the same time. What's this dude from the Tang sect trying to do? Is he trying to die together with me? The judge released his martial soul in his astonishment, and his body moved several dozen meters away in a flash. He was actually an agility-type soul master. Wang Dong had no intention of letting him go. She expanded her wings again, and switched directions gracefully in the air as she chased after the judge. Back on the rostrum, Shu Tianran said plainly, relieved that judge of his duties after the competition. You have to be discerning even if you're biased. He's going to disgrace our empire by showing such bias when everyone's watching. What an idiot. Yes. Cold light flashed across Juzi's eyes. However, the image of her and Wang Dong healing Hu Yuhao together surfaced in her mind at this moment. He must know that she's a girl by now. Are they together now? Juzi could feel her heart starting to palpitate as this question appeared in her mind. Why are your hands so cold, Juzi? Shu Tianran asked confusedly. Juzi felt her heart skip a beat and said hurriedly, the tournament is too exciting. Perhaps I'm just a little nervous. Shu Tianran smiled. You can't be crushing on that youth from the Tang sect, can you? He's the most handsome man I've ever seen, though. I couldn't match up to him even if I could walk. Juzi couldn't help but laugh. Are you envious, Your Highness? Shu Tianran chortled and said, I'm also a man, how can I not be envious? He was wearing a smile on his face, but the sparkle in his eyes was as cold as ever. He couldn't please his women, so deep in his heart, he was quite afraid that his women wouldn't be loyal to him. He couldn't take it even if it was just emotional disloyalty. However, Juzi's next sentence pacified the fury that was just rising in his heart. Juzi continued, I'm glad that you're envious for me, because that means you care about me. However, there's no need to be envious about a girl, is there? A girl? Shu Tianran was momentarily stunned. Juzi bent down beside his ear and whispered, can't you tell that Wang Dong is a girl? How could a man be that good-looking? Shu Tianran was still shocked. So, she's a girl. How did you find out? Juzi smiled and replied, didn't you ask me to investigate the Tang sect? My people made that judgment from their intel and observations. She's not just a girl, I think she's together with Hu Yuhao. They stay with each other every day, and she's the one that takes care of him. A girl, huh? She would be very pretty if she were wearing women's clothes. Shu Tianran murmured to himself. However, his eyes suddenly became cruel and fierce as he spoke. If I hadn't lost the ability to be a man, how many beautiful girls like that would I have for myself? You're hurting me, Your Highness. Juzi exclaimed agonizingly. Shu Tianran froze, and his eyes quickly returned to normal. I'm sorry. Juzi grabbed his hand and said, it's all right, Your Highness. Please don't think too much about that. The Empire's technology is so advanced, it's just a matter of time before we discover something that can heal your wounds. Yes, Shu Tianran nodded. Let's watch the competition. The scene on stage had changed drastically as they were talking. Wang Dong was right about to crash into the ground as she plunged through the air, and the judge was running away as quickly as he could. He wasn't a 7-ringed soul sage for nothing, and it wasn't that easy for Wang Dong to catch up to him even though she was flying through the air. The ground was right before her eyes. Wang Dong suddenly turned around, and her slender legs tapped lightly on the floor's surface. She bounced off the ground at the moment the 3 explosive shells behind her were about to touch her, and she flew back into the sky at lightning speed. Boom, boom, boom. 3 violent explosions rang out at almost the same time. Even though the competition stage was reinforced by soul tools, it couldn't take an explosion as forceful as this one. Metal pieces flew in all directions, and intense shockwaves reached every corner of the competition stage. But those shockwaves only seemed to push Wang Dong away, and helped her rise even faster through the air. Wang Dong was covered by a golden light, and the shockwaves didn't hurt her at all. However, a frightening pressure descended from the sky right at that moment. Shashing naturally wasn't idle when Wang Dong was falling through the sky with 3 explosive shells on her tail. The attack that he had just launched was meant to preoccupy her. Xiao Hongchen had already shared his findings regarding the Tang sect with his companions before this, and Wang Dong was one of the people that they had to pay extra attention to. They were already aware that Wang Dong had 6 rings now. Even Shashing himself didn't expect his second round of explosive shells would force Wang Dong to tuck tail and run. Distance was extremely important in a fight between Soul Engineers and Soul Masters, and Soul Engineers would reign supreme if there was enough distance between the two parties. Shashing was decisive, and immediately withdrew the other soul tools that he was about to use to continue his suppression of Wang Dong. A fiery red heavy cannon appeared on his shoulder. This heavy cannon was about 2 meters long, and its barrel about 30 centimeters in diameter. It began to release a dense and searing aura from the moment it appeared. It was made from scarlet sun steel, and its formation arrays were sculpted from scarlet flame crystals. The most important thing about using crystals to create formation arrays was that one couldn't afford to make a single mistake or miscalculation, and one had to finish everything in one go. Otherwise, there was no way to change anything, as crystals weren't as malleable as metal. Shashing began to infuse as much soul power as he could into the cannon. This was clearly a Class 6 Scarlet Flame cannon, and it was being charged up as high as possible. This charging process was almost complete when Wang Dong turned back around and rocketed upwards. A cruel look flashed across Shashing's eyes. So what if you're a Soul Emperor? Even Soul Sages won't dare to meet my Scarlet Flame cannon's attack head-on. I wonder how you're going to dodge this. A miniature metal tube rose discreetly from his left shoulder, and a ruby-red beam fired out and landed directly on Wang Dong. Is that a positioning-type soul tool? Huo Yuhao's eyes became a lot more focused as he sat inside the waiting area. Positioning-type soul tools were typically used for stationary soul tools, as they were more practical, and they were equivalent to the stationary soul tool sites. It was apparent that the positioning-type soul tool that Shashing was using wasn't that simple, and the Class 6 Scarlet Flame cannon's barrel shone with red light as soon as the ruby light beam fired out from his positioning-type soul tool. It was very taxing for Class 5 Soul Engineers to operate Class 6 soul tools, and this was still the case even though Shashing was nearing his 6th soul ring. Therefore, he couldn't add any more tracking mechanisms to his Class 6 Scarlet Flame cannon. However, he did pull a cheap trick to get around this. He used a Class 4 positioning-type soul tool and merged it with his soul cannon, giving his cannon shell a certain ability to track its target. Furthermore, the Scarlet Flame cannon itself had certain abilities to lock onto its target. It was clear that he intended to smash everything onto Wang Dong without further ado, so that he could end the fight right here and now. Wang Dong could sense the immense pressure coming towards her, and suddenly halted in her upwards flight. She spread out her wings, and looked up calmly at the frightening Scarlet Flame cannon that was still charging up above her. She glowed even more intensely, to the point where her radiant butterfly goddess wings, which were mainly blue, were blanketed with brilliant golden hues. Go to hell! Shashing roared and fired off the heavy cannon in his hands, and a frightening scarlet-red beam of fire erupted from the Scarlet Flame cannon. The flames froze in midair for an instant before they instantly transformed into an enormous fireball that contorted and undulated with wave-like patterns before arriving before Wang Dong in an eye blink. Every single person in the audience held their breath. The gigantic fireball had swelled to the point where it was almost half again as large as Wang Dong's body. Could she take the hit? Was she about to be consumed by the fireball? Everyone had a very intuitive judgment about beauty. Even though Shashing was representing the Sun Moon Empire, Wang Dong's handsomeness and her good looks gave her quite a number of supporters. Many people subconsciously closed their eyes, as they couldn't bear to see such a handsome youth perish just like that. Only those who kept their eyes open witnessed something that was nothing short of a miracle. Wang Dong had no intention of evading the enormous ball of flame. Instead, she opened her arms, and her entire body seemed to transform into transparent golden water crystals in that moment. Her 5th soul ring lit up at the same time. The tremendous Scarlet Flame cannon shell had already arrived. However, Wang Dong's body was instantly covered by a golden ripple, and she burst with light that seemed like a reflection from the water crystals that enveloped the cannon shell in front of her. The cannon shell's forward momentum was slowed, and Wang Dong actually opened her arms just like that and wrapped them around the huge cannon shell. Yes, she hugged it. Furthermore, the incredibly unstable and reactive cannon shell didn't explode at all. This is, even Shu Tianran gasped involuntarily from the rostrum. Wang Dong's eyes had become completely golden by now. There was a tinge of mockery in her eyes as she stared at the young man opposite her. I'm giving it back to you. Wang Dong raised her hands up into the sky and passed the cannon shell onto her right hand. The cannon shell shone with even more intense light as she raised it high into the air, and the scarlet-red flames were converted into brilliant golden fire. In the next moment, the cannon shell left a blazing and dazzling trail as it hurtled back towards Shashing. Wang Dong muttered under her breath as she tossed the enormous cannon shell through the air. How can you be willing to show me your trump card if I don't give you enough time? The golden colors on her body receded as she threw the huge cannon shell away. Her wings opened behind her, and she chased after the cannon shell towards Shashing. Shashing was completely rooted to the spot. A million possible outcomes had surfaced in his mind when he fired off his heavy cannon, and the worst possible outcome was that Wang Dong had an invincible barrier to defend herself against this strike. But even so, he would still have time to continue attacking, and using an invincible barrier also consumed soul power. Furthermore, this was equivalent to him erasing one of his opponent's trump cards, but never in his wildest dreams did he expect the attack that he had charged for so long to come back towards him. The golden cannon shell was whistling through the air towards him, and it wasn't any slower than before. Shashing immediately recovered as he slapped himself on the chest while he gritted his teeth. A golden barrier instantly rose from his body and shielded his entire body within. The person that unleashed an invincible barrier wasn't Wang Dong, it was him. Boom. A frightening explosion echoed through the sky, a golden flower blooming with riveting and bedazzling beauty. Shashing was at the center of this explosion, and he could feel that his soul power was being consumed at an excessively alarming rate. An invincible barrier could only be used once, and it began to make crackling noises, as if it couldn't withstand the terrifying explosion. It took him immense effort before the explosion's aftershocks finally disappeared. However, his soul power had diminished to less than 50% because of this, along with the soul tools he had used before this. What made Shashing even more terrified was the fact that Wang Dong had completely vanished from his field of view. Above you, fool! Xiao Hongchen raged from the sidelines. It was a pity that Shashing couldn't hear him at all from within the competition stage's protective barrier. An enormous golden hexagram hovered above Shashing's head. Just as his eyes were darting around fearfully, a large golden beam descended from the sky and swallowed his entire body. Shashing's Class 5 protective soul barrier that he used to protect his body was immediately triggered, but nobody could see him anymore. Wang Dong dove from high above the sky as she extended her wings, and a golden sphere quickly condensed and took form in front of her. Shashing's protective soul barrier was ripped to pieces, and another invincible barrier rose from his body. However, Shashing had less than 30% of his soul power left, and he could do little more than watch as another brilliant golden sphere slammed against his second invincible barrier. Sharp and shrill sounds could be heard as uncountable golden sparks erupted into the air. Shashing's soul power rapidly dwindled, and his eyes were full of despair by now. Wang Dong was still very close by, and her wings were fully extended as she descended from the sky like the goddess of light. He knew that he had been defeated. I admit defeat. Shashing shouted as loud as he could. He had learned of the Tang sect's identity from Xiao Hongchen long before this, and knew both parties were mortal enemies. He didn't want to lose his life here because of any unwarranted stubbornness. Furthermore, there was still a group battle after this, and this wasn't the time for him to give everything he could. He was the first to fight, so all he had to do was use milk bottles to recover his soul power, and he would be back in peak condition when it was time for the group battle. Shashing felt as if he had lost this battle way too unconvincingly, and because he didn't know anything about Wang Dong's insidious fifth soul skill. He still didn't know exactly what Wang Dong's soul skill had done even now. Wang Dong's eyes flowed with mockery when she heard him admit defeat, the judge beneath her already hollering at her to stop. Wang Dong extended her arms to signal that she wasn't attacking anymore. She withdrew her wings and slowly descended to the ground. The golden sphere that she had released continued rubbing against Shashing's invincible barrier, but the radiance was getting weaker and weaker. The butterfly goddess slash originally had an area of effect, but she had focused it into a single point, giving it an incredible destructive force. Shashing heaved a sigh of relief as if a huge burden were lifted off his chest. The invincible barrier that he was using was the strongest possible type, and he looked on as her attack gradually grew weaker to the point where it could no longer hurt him. His invincible barrier was enough to hold on. Wang Dong drifted to the ground and turned towards the judge. She said mockingly, "Don't worry, I'm not attacking him anymore. However, if I had been the one that was at a disadvantage, would you have been so worried?" The judge shot a cold look at her and said, "Why don't you try and find out?" Wang Dong raised her index finger and wiggled it at him. "You won't get that chance. Can you declare that I have won this fight?" "Yes. The Tang sect is victorious in the first single elimination match." The judge hadn't even finished his sentence when an agonizing howl echoed from the sky, and a body plummeted down in the next moment. The judge was still a soul sage after all, so his reactions were extremely quick. He immediately caught the body falling through the air in a flash of motion. Shashing's face was ghastly pale, and he was exhaling much more than he was inhaling, while his life energy was slipping away at a dangerous rate. You killed him." The judge turned back towards Wang Dong, infuriated. Wang Dong's expression seemed as innocent as ever. "Which eye of yours saw that I killed him? I came down in the same moment that he admitted defeat, and I have been by your side this entire time." The first match was over, and the protective barriers around the competition stage naturally receded and disappeared. Xiao Hongchen and Meng Hongchen leapt onto stage at almost the same time as they raced over. They were also astounded when Shashing dropped from the sky for some unknown reason. They could clearly see that Wang Dong's butterfly goddess slash had disappeared before that. Did Shashing burn through every ounce of his soul power? However, they could immediately tell when they came near that Shashing's circumstance wasn't as simple as him exhausting all his soul power. The judge caught him before he hit the ground, and even if he didn't have any soul power left, he would only be exhausted and fatigued. But he wasn't breathing anymore at the moment, and he was as dead as he could be. Xiao Hongchen roared furiously, Wang Dong, you dare to kill my teammate? Wang Dong wore the same innocent expression and replied, I didn't kill anyone. I have no idea why he's dead. Are you blind? Meng Hongchen hesitated and said, brother, can it be that Shashing has some hidden problems? It's true that Wang Dong didn't do anything to him. Xiao Hongchen spun around and slapped Meng Hongchen across the face. Shut up. You've become so disloyal because of your infatuation. You're still defending your opponents even at a time like this. Get lost. Meng Hongchen felt her heart skip a beat as she stared at Xiao Hongchen's bloodshot eyes. She felt extremely aggrieved, but she didn't dare to say anything more. Meng Hongchen lifted her head and glanced at Wang Dong before tears welled up in her eyes, and she turned and ran away. Xiao Hongchen took Shashing's body from the judge. He glared at Wang Dong and gritted his teeth. I will not stop until I draw my last breath. Wang Dong smiled faintly and said, come, then. Are you up next? Or are you going to keep letting your teammates die? Xiao Hongchen took a deep breath, and his outraged expression gradually calmed down. Instead, he said nothing more as he stepped off the stage with Shashing's corpse in his arms. Wang Dong took out a milk bottle as if she were demonstrating a magic trick, and she stood there quietly to replenish her soul power. Wang Dong had won this battle. She had eliminated her opponent, to the point where he didn't get to give everything that he had. It could be said that she had won this fight absolutely and perfectly. The radiant butterfly goddess fifth soul skill, the goddess of light's possession. Wang Dong could transform herself into a light elemental form for 3 seconds, and this allowed her to develop an affinity for every other element except the darkness element. This soul skill amplified the force of her other soul skills by 100%, and this also allowed her to strike back at darkness elements with 3 times the original force. Wang Dong relied on the goddess of light's possession's special characteristic of developing an affinity for other elements to control the enormous fire-type Scarlet Flame cannon shell. She was then able to throw it back, and thus clinch her victory. Shashing's death obviously had something to do with her. Her butterfly goddess slash was discreetly charged up with the ability that her broken devil of light right arm bone carried, the devil-breaking golden light, which erupted only in the last second and directly pierced into Shashing's heart. How could he survive an attack like that? Wang Dong had murdered one of the Sun Moon Empire's main team members, which meant that she had undoubtedly greatly weakened the opposing team's overall strength. This was extremely beneficial for the group battle that was to come afterwards, and towards Shrek Academy's fight against the Sun Moon Empire after today. Xiao Hongchen didn't take the second fight because of Wang Dong's words. The next person to fight was a stocky and muscular youth, who looked like a square box when he stepped on stage. His torso very wide, but he was only about 1.60 meters tall. His thick arms were bigger than some people's thighs, and his short and needle-like hair complemented his intrepid aura, while his eyes seemed like they were burning with flames. His feet made plonking noises on the ground with every step that he took. Judge. Wang Dong spoke up right at this moment. What? The judge replied with an enraged look on his face. His mood was horrible. Even though he was biased in this competition, one of the Sun Moon Empire's team members had still lost his life. Wang Dong continued, look at the floor, it's so badly damaged. How can we continue the competition like this? Don't you think we should fix it up a little before anything else? That was true. The 3 explosive shells that had hammered into the ground had created an enormous crater that was more than 15 meters across. Metal fragments, stone, and gravel were scattered all over the place, and the competition stage seemed as wretched as it could be. The judge glanced coldly at her and said, is this the outcome you were hoping for when you brought the 3 explosive shells down to the ground? What a sly little rascal. However, you're going to be disappointed. I'm the judge for this round, and I have the authority to determine whether the competition stage should be fixed or not. You can fly, right? How will the flooring affect you? The competition is to continue. The short and stocky youth had already walked over, and he was getting closer and closer. Wang Dong could distinctly hear that his entire skeleton was crackling incessantly. Are your bones going to break? Do you want to go back and check it out first? Wang Dong said to him with a concerned look on her face. Enough nonsense, the short, stocky youth shouted angrily. You killed Shashing, and I will force you to follow him into the grave. Wang Dong frowned and said, what's your name? The stocky youth glared at her and replied, my name is Shing. Wang Dong's large, pretty blue eyes widened as she said, is he your boyfriend or your girlfriend? Why are you so angry? You can eat anything, but you can't just say anything you want. Which eye of yours saw that I killed him? And you still want to slander me? You, bastard. Shing wasn't as good with words as Wang Dong was, and he darted forward and was about to attack her. Wang Dong just stood there and didn't move at all. Her eyes were fixed innocently on the judge instead. The judge wanted to be biased towards the Sun Moon Empire's team, but he couldn't allow Shing to violate the rules and attack his opponent before the match had even begun. The judge hurriedly stepped in to block Shing, and he put on a serious look as he said, the round has yet to begin. I will disqualify you if you violate the rules. Go back to your places and prepare for battle. You can only attack each other once I've announced that the competition has begun. Shing huffed and puffed as he glared at Wang Dong. I will break you into 1,000,000 pieces to avenge Shashing. With that, he turned around and strode back to his spot. Wang Dong smiled at the judge. She was currently dressed like a man, but her good looks still stunned the judge momentarily as he returned her gaze. "You're an honest and fair judge." She walked away slowly after her remark. The judge had recovered by now, and he almost vomited blood. What's he thinking, calling me an honest and fair judge? This fellow. Hu Yuhao gave Wang Dong a thumbs up from beneath the stage. Wang Dong gave him a smile in return as she put the milk bottle in her hands away, and turned around to face Zhu Xinghao. Hu Yuhao's mouth moved as he mouthed something to her. Wang Dong tilted her head to signal that she understood. With the chemistry that the two of them had, they could even communicate through soundless mouthing. The judge wasn't like before, and he waited for both parties to return to their rightful spots before he raised his right arm into air and swung it down forcefully. Zhu Xinghao didn't fly into the air like Shashing had before. As the judge swung his arm down, he raised both arms into the air. A black ball of light began to light up, and a metal wheel that was more than half a meter in diameter appeared in his hands, which he tossed heavily in front of him. The metal wheel dropped to the ground with a heavy plonk, and began to rotate vigorously. Ear-splitting clanging sounds could be heard, and the wheel rapidly transformed into a large and wide base. Zhu Xinghao leapt onto the base, and at least 12 spots on his body shone with the light of storage-type soul tools. This was the Soul Tool Fortress, a classic opening. However, his Soul Tool Fortress base was conspicuously bigger than that of typical forts. However, it was at this moment that Zhu Xinghao found himself in a daze. His Soul Tool Fortress was just entering its second assembly phase, and it hadn't been more than 2 seconds since he took out the wheel to toss onto the ground, but a mass of golden spheres was already crashing toward her. 2 seconds ago, Wang Dong had made her move right when the judge swung his hand down. She didn't even release her martial soul, but her entire body shot into the sky like an arrow as she rocketed towards Zhu Xinghao's position. A powerful ray of light sparkled as she dashed out, and the blinding white light propelled her forward as she rapidly accelerated to about 100 meters per second. The competition stage was only 100 meters in diameter. This also meant that 1 second was all it took for Wang Dong to reach her opponent. Wang Dong only unleashed her radiant butterfly goddess when she was about 10 meters away from Zhu Xinghao. Her dazzling wings extended to both sides, and she made use of that forceful propulsion force as she flapped down with her wings. Air resistance allowed her to soar upwards, and her entire body shot into the sky just like that. She opened her wings, and was facing Zhu Xinghao as her second soul ring lit up, and her light of the butterfly goddess rained down on Zhu Xinghao like a meteor shower. It wasn't just people from the Sun Moon Empire that knew how to use soul tools. Wang Dong had a Class 6 soul engineer with her, and how could Hu Yuhao not help the woman he loved suit up? This was the force that a Class 6 soul thruster could emit within a short period of time. Wang Dong's cultivation and physique was just enough to sustain the pressure from a soul thruster of this class. The entire process happened way too quickly. The audience could only see a flash across their eyes before 2 bluish-gold wings stretched out not far from where Zhu Xinghao was, and golden meteors that seemed to eclipse the sun rained down from the sky. Zhu Xinghao's Soul Tool Fortress was still being assembled, and wasn't operational at all. He had no other choice but to open his Class 5 protective soul barrier at once. He was also a Class 5 soul engineer, and he was a 5-ringed soul king as well. His cultivation was a little weaker than Shashing's HD bean, but he was unnaturally talented, and he also possessed incredible strength. Zhu Xinghao had his own unique mastery of soul tool fortresses, and he could control certain immensely powerful and dense soul tools to assemble his very own fortress. He had a nickname within the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy. He was known as Heavy Cannon. Zhu Xinghao used his protective soul barrier to defend himself against Wang Dong's assault. He gritted his teeth as he pushed his soul tools to assemble as fast as he could. However, Wang Dong didn't continue her onslaught, instead descending from the sky. She folded her wings and raised them high into the sky, before they transformed into 2 enormous guillotine-like blades that slashed down from the sky. Her luminous wings seemed to make sparks as they slashed through the air, and dazzling golden flames began to burn. Zhu Xinghao's protective soul barrier crackled and quivered amidst shrill and sharp sounds. In the next moment, Zhu Xinghao saw the same light sphere that took Shashing's life erupt before him, and so, he subconsciously unleashed his own invincible barrier. The Sun Moon Empire hadn't even understood how Shashing perished before Zhu Xinghao entered the arena. He didn't want to follow in his good friend's footsteps. Stupid. Wang Dong muttered with a smile on her face, and her footwork changed as she wrapped around behind him. However, she didn't launch any further attacks. Zhu Xinghao's Soul Tool Fortress was finally complete amidst a series of metal clanging sounds. At this moment, he seemed like a large metal porcupine, and more than 150 cannon barrels of various kinds protruded from his body, while he stood upon the metal base like a giant metal monster, and this was under the circumstance that stationary soul tools weren't allowed. Otherwise, the much bigger stationary soul cannons would make him look even more valiant and fearsome. Zhu Xinghao gritted his teeth, as he knew that he had been tricked. Everyone on their team had 2 invincible barriers, but soul power was still needed to use one. The user still had to use about 1% of his or her soul power even if their opponent didn't launch another attack, while the most important component that he required for his soul tool fortress was soul power. Zhu Xinghao activated one soul ring after another generously, and he unleashed all his soul skills that amplified his soul power. At the same time, the soul tool fortress began to spin on its base, and snapped around to track Wang Dong. Dozens of soul rays fired off, and swung around as if they intended to slash the entire world into pieces. However, he still couldn't see Wang Dong anywhere even after he completed a 360-degree turn. He looked up at the sky instinctively, but there was nothing in the sky. I love to beat fools, Wang Dong's voice sounded from behind him. Zhu Xinghao couldn't see, but the audience could. Wang Dong had been behind him this entire time. Soul Tool fortresses could only cover about 180 degrees around the user, because cannons wouldn't be installed on the user's back, as the body could rotate. Wang Dong picked up on this weakness, and she began to use Ghost Shadow Perplexing Track as the Soul Tool fort was rotating, and followed Zhu Xinghao's rotation. She wasn't too hasty to launch another attack, however. Zhu Xinghao had his invincible barrier and his Class 5 protective soul barrier, so attacking her opponent would be highly inefficient at this moment. However, both of these barriers required soul power to operate. Cold sweat trickled down Zhu Xinghao's forehead. However, the fact that he could represent the Sun Moon Empire in a tournament like this meant he had some outstanding characteristics. Nobody understood how Shashing had died in the previous battle, and he had perished without unleashing his full potential. Zhu Xinghao didn't want to see himself in a similar situation. The Soul Tool fortress was like a metal porcupine, and a ball of silver light suddenly rose up from its position behind the nape of his neck and instantly exploded above his head. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.